Hey you guys! Oh my goodness. I just get so nervous. But as you join, leave a comment in the chat and we will get started discussing Razorblade Tears in a minute or two. And let me know what you thought of this book. Were you just like blindsided like I was at how violent this book was? I just did not see that coming. I knew it was vigilante like ish, but I didn't know how like graphically violent it would be, but like substance and depth that I'm really, really glad that we read this. So let me know what you think of it, and I'll give everyone a minute or two. I just saw that my like notification on my book club Instagram like just was like ended. So if you're joining, hello, thank you so much for being here. And we'll get started in a minute or two to discuss this wild ride of a book. And as you join, let me know if you enjoyed it or if it wasn't your cup of tea, because it was a very different like genre, I would say, than most of the other books I've picked for the book club. And that's what I kind of liked about it, but it definitely was very, very different. So let me know what you thought of it as you're popping in. And I have my bajillions of notes as always. I always feel like a college kid writing like an essay or something as I get ready for my book clubs. But I will dive in. And so this book was so surprising to me because, like I said, it's a very different type of story than I'm used to. With it being just much more of that kind of like John Wick vigilante type of thing, and very like masculine. Like I think a lot of guys would read this book and enjoy this. And if you didn't know, this is being turned into a movie, so I can totally see that. Like the writing was so real and vivid. I could see the whole thing. Like, I don't know if everyone is like that, where you can like see the book that you're reading. Like sometimes I feel like I didn't even read a book, I like saw a movie. That's how this felt to me, because I could just see everything so well and picture the characters so perfectly. And it was just a very, very, very like perfectly written book, because you could just put yourself in that environment and in the character's shoes. And hey, Brenda. So Brenda listened to it on Audible and loved the narrator. The story was so layered, shocking at times, but really loved it. That is such a great way to put it. It was very, very graphic and like just so unbelievable at times. Like some of the things that happen in here in this book were just, yeah, shocking. And that I need to listen to more audiobooks. I just yet for some reason, but that is super cool that it was a really great audiobook. And like you said, Brenda, it's so layered, and I just felt like it was so realistic. Like the conversations between Buddy Lee and Ike, especially like as they were still feeling each other out and getting to know each other, were so deep yet so real. Like it felt like I was reading or like just overhearing a real conversation, because even though it was about such serious topics like race, and Ike explaining to Buddy Lee how different his life is, even though he has a business and he has a nice truck, but because he's Black, he is like pulled over all the time and just looked at as like, how did you get this truck? There's no way you could have earned it yourself. And I read a really interesting interview with the author S.A. Cosby, and he said that this book is his first one that's like actually set basically where he lives in Virginia, but all of his books, which I haven't read any of his others, but I've heard that Blacktop Wasteland is a must read, so definitely check that out if you enjoyed this. But he said this book is like, he took the inspiration from where he lived, and he does that for all of his books, but this one was like, he took where he grew up and placed this story there. So I feel like maybe he has had very similar interactions or just knows what goes on in these towns, and it was just like you could put yourself in those characters' positions, and it was just a really, really well done book. And thinking about like the characters Buddy Lee and Ike, they were definitely anti-heroes. I had a lot of conflicting emotions throughout the story with, do I root for them? Do I not root for them? Because obviously they're the ones that are trying to get justice for their murdered sons, but they didn't show their sons acceptance and love as they grew up into men because they were gay. And that obviously like was something they regretted after their sons were killed, but it's too late then, like, and that is something that obviously they grappled with throughout the story. But it was really hard trying to feel like sympathy for these dads some of the times, because you just know how they treated their sons when they were alive. So it was definitely a really cool story in like character development. And like I was rooting for Buddy Lee and Ike, one, to find out who did this to their sons. Not that I'm a vigilante or anything, but that's how they wanted to deal with it. But I was mostly rooting for them to grow as like accepting people. And it was just very interesting to see all of, oh, there's like a fly in here. All of the like bad things that Buddy Lee and Ike did before the story and even during the story, because it was like not holding back from their reality. I think it could have been very like easy but not as believable if they just suddenly turned into these like perfect men that didn't do anything bad, and they just like opened a organization for like gay men or something. I don't know, like where they just completely changed who they were. But that just would have been way too unbelievable. So this book, I just thought, knowing these characters, it was exactly what they would have done. And I just really struggled with them at some points just because of who they are. And I think that is the point of the story, is that they did grow as people, but they still had problems. Like they still were anti-heroes, which I haven't seen a lot or haven't read a lot of books like that. So it was really, really interesting. And in the end, gosh, there's so much that we have to talk about, but like in the end, one of them doesn't survive, and I wasn't really that upset. So we'll get into that. And definitely let me know your thoughts and any particular parts you want to talk about, because I have some written down, but I couldn't write down everything because we would be here for like 10 hours. But yeah, since it's becoming a movie, it's going to be super violent, so I don't know if I'll be able to see it, just because I'm a scaredy cat, but it was just really cool. Like I don't read a lot of like action thrillers like this, and so this one had so much action. And so when you look back at the story and see how Buddy Lee and Ike come together, the tipping point is when Ike gets the call from the like funeral home or the graveyard and finds out that their son's tombstone was defaced. And so that like triggers Ike to call Buddy Lee, and then they start working together to do their vigilante justice because the police just they don't think the police are doing enough. It seems like the police have reached a dead end because none of their son's friends or coworkers or whatever are giving information to the police. And that definitely feels real. Like, especially, like, I don't know if there was race like involved in that as well, like with the cops and maybe some of the people. Like, you just might not want to like give a lot of information to the police if you haven't had good experiences with them. So the police finding much of anything, no leads, and it seemed very pointed and very like targeted that this gay couple was murdered out in the open, and it was just like a targeted attack. So Buddy Lee and Ike start working together, and I thought it was so smart for them to go to their son's like townhouse or apartment or whatever it was. That was super smart to me. I feel like in a lot of mysteries or like crimes, the characters are so dumb. Like, they don't start to look in the most obvious place. So they looked in the most obvious place. Unfortunately, the gang that is coming after them also went there at the exact same time. So it was pretty unfortunate. And can I just say how much I despise Grayson? Oh my God, that like first chapter where it was in his perspective, I was like, I got like whiplash. I was like, what? Who is this guy? And like, I was so appalled and disgusted by him. And of course, that only got progressively more as I read the book. And good riddance that he died. But of course, the few gang members get to the apartment, and then all hell breaks loose, and whew, that I do not want to see that in a movie form, let me tell you. So the good thing about them going to the boys' apartment was that, or house, was that they found like that little like sketch or like note or whatever that mentioned Tangerine. And of course, unless you know who it is, like, you wouldn't necessarily think of that as a person's name. So Buddy Lee saw that note and brought it with him, but didn't know what it really meant. And then over time, they like figured out who, like, that it was someone involved in this. And then they eventually went on the hunt to find her, since she was kind of the missing link of this story. And I think my favorite parts of this book were definitely between, like, the conversations between Buddy Lee and Ike. Like I mentioned earlier, their conversation that Buddy Lee was like, you're just so, like, what are, like, Buddy Lee, I guess, is more poor than Ike. And so Buddy Lee was like, I would do anything, like, to have a truck like you and to have my own business and stuff. Like, you have it made. And Ike is like, you don't know anything about what it's like to be Black. Like, it's way easier to be poor. And even if you are well off and you're Black, especially where they live in the South, it's not an easy life, and it's not going to really matter whether or not you have a business or a nice truck or money or whatever. Like, you're still looked down upon. And I thought that was such a poignant and like eye-opening conversation for Buddy Lee, but I also think for the reader, that is just such a plain way to put it. Like, I think more conversations like that need to be in stories, because it's just an easier way, especially for white people, to grasp what is it like to not have light skin in certain parts of America or anywhere in America. So that, I thought, was such a powerful scene and moment, and really was a turning point in their friendship, I think, because after that I think that's when they were trying to find Tangerine, and they were like in very rural areas, and they went to like someone's house, and like Buddy Lee went and was, I don't think those people would have talked to you the way they talked to me. And that was like, wow, I was so proud of Buddy Lee in that moment, because it was like, you're right. Like, they wouldn't have been as helpful or polite or anything. They like most likely would have done something horrible, or at least like said horrible things. And so that was just a really awesome turning point, and I think just a really realistic conversation to have between a black and a white character. I just loved it. So that was obviously a big point that I wanted to touch on. Hey, Annie! I actually got my book last week and just started reading it. I think the book is thought-provoking so far. It's a unique read for me. Agreed on all of that. It was very different for me as well. And definitely like that hyper masculinity like definitely came through loud and clear in this book. And also in a interview or article I read with this author, it was talking about like how masculinity, like the different types of masculinity that is shown in this book, like the violence and like the being like horrible to women, and just like not accepting like gay people or the LGBTQ community. Like those are things that are kind of seen as like tough and like manly, but really what is manly or like a powerful thing to be is accepting and standing with people. And I loved the scene with Ike in the barbershop when he overheard, again, a very realistic conversation between other people in the barbershop about, was it about like basketball players or like something like that, like someone being like gay, and that like they would, if their son came home gay, like, or if their son turned out gay, that's like the father's fault and like they messed up. And I was so proud of Ike for confronting that person, because one of the other guys was also like, hey man, like that's not cool. That's like just such a small-minded way to think. And then Ike, of course, in his natural way of threatening people, but like he stood up against this guy and basically like showed that it's not cool or manly to be like homophobic. So I thought that was like a really just showed a lot of Ike's growth with accepting his son, unfortunately, after he passed away and was murdered. But that was another like moment where I was like, yeah, like I was really rooting for them to grow as people. And yeah, my notes kind of go over all of that and how like realistic the conversations were, and that they evolved and like changed their mindsets in a realistic way. Like they still messed up and they still didn't get it. Like I think a few other times Buddy Lee was not really understanding of like what it's like to be black, and so he was saying things that he was just ignorant about. And so they like had those conversations, and so Buddy Lee didn't like turn into like the perfect ally or something over one conversation. It took time, and same with Ike with his experience in the gay bar or the gay club, where that guy, he thought he was hitting on him, and it was like he took it way too far and was gonna like beat that guy to death basically. So Oh, sorry. I was just seeing someone out in our yard, but I think it's just my dad, and it was freaking me out. So anyway, I think I'm okay now. But yeah, like when Ike, even like over the period of this book, as he's trying to like understand that there's nothing wrong with being gay and that it doesn't affect him at all. Like, it shouldn't bother you at all if someone else loves another person of the same gender. Like, he just didn't get it. So he was overcoming those like preconceived notions and that like homophobia that he had his whole life, basically. And then in that situation at the bar, like, it showed he still was not okay with like either being perceived as potentially gay or being around gay people. Like, I feel like he and like Buddy Lee, I think, was more accepting at that stage, but Ike was definitely still at the point where it's cool if you're gay, like over there, but I don't want you anywhere near me. Like, that's how I perceived him at that point. And I think that was obviously a really like low moment for his character to like beat this guy up like with no reason, other than like Ike himself feeling like his masculinity was being threatened. And he was like, I'm not gay, like, I'm gonna beat you up because of it. And it was really sad, like, for everyone involved. And like, that was a very low point of Ike's like evolution. But it did, like, he did ultimately really grow as a person and as an accepting person of like the LGBTQ community. And we will get to where he really was accepting at the end. But yeah, those like pivotal moments, I think, were like, there was so much violence, but I tried to like shield myself from that and just really focus on like the really human, like poignant parts that I had never seen like depicted before in other like media that I've seen. So I thought those were really just like well done and very realistic. I wrote bite. I almost said bike. Ike and Buddy Lee do a lot of violent, crazy stuff in the name of getting justice for their sons, and I stand behind that because how many shootouts did they have? At least three that I can remember, like huge shootouts. So yeah, this movie I think is going to be like a big action, like huge seller, but it has like all these really deep, like really, really important messages built in, which I think is what excites me so much about it becoming a movie, because even though I am too scared to see it, most likely, the people that will see it, I hope, get something from it. And I just think that that's really, really exciting. So anyway, so Ike and Buddy Lee find Tangerine after like the all going through like figuring out, oh, Tangerine is a person, and then it like led to all this stuff. So that was also a shootout at Tangerine's mom's house. And I love the little like clues and like, yeah, just the little clues that the author had throughout, like when Ike and Buddy Lee were like looking at the childhood pictures of like in Tangerine's house, and how there was like a little black boy with like a mom and a dad, but like the dad wasn't in the picture anymore, and there didn't really seem to be a picture of like a little girl. So that started to get me thinking like maybe Tangerine is transgender, and it did turn out that she is. So that was also a pivotal moment where Ike had to really confront how accepting he really is. And I was super glad that his wife Maya seemed to really understand at least more than him, and was the one that like examined Tangerine after she got a gunshot wound, and thank God she didn't like bleed out or anything. But Maya discovered that she is transgender, that Tangerine is transgender, and told Ike about that, and was like, you can't take her just anywhere, because we know where we live is not accepting, and they might like kick her out on the street and she might die. So Ike like really grappled with that, especially for like the first few minutes. Like he was like, what? Like he was just so confused and like trying to understand what all of this meant to him. But it really doesn't matter what it means to you. Like it really matters what like gender they are portraying, or I forget the word, that like they are a woman, and that is all that should matter to you. So I was really glad that he took her to Jazzy, and like Maya also taught him the term ally, which I thought was like so cute and amazing, because we have an LGBTQ like employee resource group at my company that we just started this year, and I'm so proud of our company for having one now. And like, so we have like LGBTQ members of the community and allies, and I think it is sometimes confusing, especially if you haven't really been around people that like have ever said like the term allies for like the LGBTQ community, that like allies are people, like safe people that you can be yourself around, and that you don't have to worry about like not being accepted with them. So I thought that was really awesome of Maya to teach her husband what an ally was, and that she learned this stuff from her like job as a nurse. And I just thought that was a really cool moment. So I was super proud of Ike for not just like dismissing it, or not like he clearly didn't get it still, because you can't just like get it in a snap, but he wasn't like questioning or anything. He was like, okay, we need to make sure that Tangerine is like with a safe person, and he like understood that much. So I felt like he navigated that situation as best as he could with what he knew at the time and what he like could understand. So I was super happy that it like worked out that way, because if like Maya didn't examine her or something, it could have been a whole different situation. And I was just very happy with Ike's growth. And then in the end, we see that he did hire Tangerine as his like new receptionist and like office worker. So that like also proved he is like still on the path of acceptance and still trying to be an ally and all of that. So very proud of Ike and his growth. And then back to the crazy shit. So this whole thing was about the Isaac and Derek being murdered, and it seemed targeted. It seemed like it was because they were gay, but it was that, but it was also that they knew something that they didn't, that someone else who was paying this horrible gang didn't want them to share, because Isaac was going to put it in his like magazine that would basically like destroy this person's career. So they thought there's like a mosquito. So if you see me like going crazy, that's what it is. So Tangerine does not want to like spill the beans on who she's seeing. She's like, he's a good person. He just can't say that he's with me because he's in a really high profile like position and blah 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 and all this stuff. And so I was glad that, I'm not sure who, I can't remember if it was Ike or Buddy Lee, but they were like, does he ever like go out with you publicly, or does he only ever meet you at the motel, or like is he just sweet talking you to like keep you quiet basically, and only using you really, and not really going to leave his wife for you and all of that stuff. And Tangerine was like, no, 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 he's a really good person. He would never ever do that. But we know he's a killer. So, oh my gosh, Buddy Lee and Ike, so smart, thinking about and figuring out who Tangerine was seeing. And did anyone else totally like freak out when you discovered that it is Buddy Lee's ex-wife's new husband, who's like the governor or whatever, or he's running for governor. He's a judge. Yeah, he's a judge and he's running for governor. Gerald Winthrop or whatever. And I was just like, what? Like, I could not even believe it. And it was just such a great and like shocking, truly shocking moment for me. I did not see that coming at all. And so when they like basically tell Tangerine, like, we know who that you're seeing, Gerald, and like he really doesn't care about you. He killed our sons. Like he gave the order to kill our sons and paid these horrible white supremacists like all this money to kill our sons. And so then they get this like really great idea to kidnap his father. That was so brilliant because he would not give a shit if his wife was kidnapped. Like he just doesn't strike me as the kind of guy that would care about that really that much. But definitely his dad, he cared about him being kidnapped. So that was so brilliant to lure his dad into a trap with Tangerine. And of course he was like so like gross and weird towards her. And then they got him and kidnapped him, and then they were like, okay, meet us at blah, blah, blah. And so then the gang, like, went there. And is that before? I guess that was after? Yeah, it was around the same time as when the gang, like, tricked Maya into thinking her house was on fire and then brought her and Buddy Lee there and kidnapped the granddaughter. Oh my God. When all that shit was going on, I was like, are you kidding me? As if these people haven't been through enough with losing their son. Like now they're going to lose their only connection to their sons and this precious little baby girl granddaughter. So that was absolutely disgusting. And I can't believe they like lit their house on fire right in front of them. That was horrible. But so that was like kind of, they were trying to get the granddaughter back and the gang wanted Tangerine. So they were like, we're going to do a swap, but instead of Tangerine, we're going to give you old man Winthrop or whatever his name was. So we'll give you him for our granddaughter. So that's how that all shook out. And so then there was that huge shootout and it was like insane. And that is going to be wild in theaters, let me tell you. So all that went crazy and like all of them died, which was awesome, except for freaking Grayson. Of course he lived, but then they dealt with him, so that was good. But of course, he would live through the explosion or whatever. Like, come on. But I wrote, nothing shocked me more and broke my heart more than discovering that Buddy Lee defaced the headstones. Nothing will upset me more than that. And I literally, after I finished reading this, I went back to that part where Ike found out about the headstones and like what happened afterwards. And first of all, what he wrote on the headstones was disgusting. But also, like, Ike immediately called Buddy Lee, which is exactly what Buddy Lee was hoping for, apparently. And then they like met up and Buddy Lee was like, so what are you going to do about it? So he was like, it makes me so mad because I was rooting for Buddy Lee. I really, really like thought that he had like a positive thing going, but in the end, he died anyway. And he already was really sick, and so he would have had probably died soon anyway. So I was kind of glad when he died, I'm not gonna lie, because I was just so disgusted by him. And even though he like grew throughout the book, he still, like, I just can't really forgive that. So I was very, very upset by that, and I will never forgive him, basically. And I would love to see who they pick for like portraying these characters in the movie, because he's like really like thin and stuff. I just keep picturing, didn't they say like Sam? There's like an actor, like Sam something. And that's who I picture as him, like with that like smoker voice, kind of like the deep South, like smoker voice. That's who I imagine. And I don't know who would play Ike. I don't know. Sam Elliott. Thank you, Sam Elliott. That is who I imagine as Buddy Lee. And then Ike, I don't know. He has to be like big and like tough. I don't know. I keep thinking Idris Elba. I think that could be pretty amazing. So anyway, doesn't really matter, but we'll find out eventually. But that is pretty much the book. And then Ike gets away with it. And like the police call him up and are like, so, like, we know it's the gang and we know it's you and we know all this stuff. And he's just like, I don't know what you're talking about. And it was just so funny. And he like had the last word and all that stuff. And so I kind of was rooting for Ike, of course, because he was one of the main characters. But anyway, that is all my thoughts on this book. And I'm sorry, Annie, for spoiling it, but you will be just as shocked reading it because it is just insane. So that was Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. And like I said, another book by him that I just saw so much stuff when I was like researching this author is Blacktop Wasteland. That apparently was his first book that like really like took the world by storm. I have not read it yet, but I really want to now. So if you like this, check out Blacktop Wasteland. Oh, I know, Brenda. The end made me so happy with Ike talking to the graves and wanting to invite Margot to their birthday party. That was so cute because they were all there. It's so sad, but like so cute. Like all of them in the graveyard, and they were like having a drink together and stuff. And Margot, Buddy Lee's neighbor, who was just a really sweet woman. I'm really glad that like she was part of this story. That like they're gonna invite her to their granddaughter's birthday party. So cute. So definitely ended on a high note, and I hope you guys enjoyed this too. Oh my gosh! Every time I do one of these like live book club discussions, it makes me realize how much I love the book. Like I really, really love this and would highly recommend it. And thank you guys so much for participating in the discussion. And so now I'm going to announce our August book club pick. So this one is probably a little less serious, at least it seems less serious than the last, like, especially this book was very, very serious. So I'm going back to my roots of like a murder. I guess this is like a murder mystery too, but this seems like a true like crime thriller. And this is by an author I've read before, and I really, really like her style. So the August book club pick is Not a Happy Family by Sherry LaPena. And she wrote The Couple Next Door, I think. And that I read earlier this year and really enjoyed it. So I was excited to see a new book from her. And so this is a short synopsis of this murder mystery craziness. So it says, in this family, everyone is keeping secrets, especially the dead. I love that. Makes me think of Pretty Little Liars. So the Mercers, like a husband and a wife, are murdered after dinner with their 3 adult children, who of course are devastated. Or are they? Dun, dun, dun. Did one of them snap after that dreadful evening, or was it someone else? It must be. After all, if one of your siblings was a psychopath, you'd know, wouldn't you? Oh my God, it just sounds so up my alley, and I think that it'll be a really good one. It sounds like a quick read, and it just came out like a few days ago, so it's like a new release and all that good stuff. So I'm really excited to read that with you guys. As always, I can't believe we've been doing these book clubs for over a year. I have so much fun talking to you guys about these. And thank you again so much, Brenda and Annie, for participating in the conversation. And thank you all for being here and watching and listening and reading along with me. It's just a really cool way to connect with you guys. So I hope you all have a really awesome rest of your weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.